Hello everyone, my name is Feeper, and welcome to the channel, or if you've been here before, welcome back to the channel. I know I haven't uploaded in a while, and I know my channel is kind of like a weird hodgepodge of whatever video game I'm playing at the time. But I have been playing a lot of Mythic Plus in World of Warcraft now for 3-4 years, and I have been maining Brewmaster for probably 2-3 seasons in a row now, and I wanted to make a quick video, well, hopefully quick video, about Brewmaster in Season 1, well, specifically Master of Harmony in Season 1 of Midnight. I am not a very big Shado-Pan enjoyer, and with some recent changes to Master of Harmony that Blizzard put out last week, I think Master of Harmony is definitely viable. Still might not be quite as good as Shado-Pan overall, perhaps, but I think it's perfectly viable. I think it's something that you can definitely run if you prefer it. And anything, you know, I just did a 17 today, and it felt very comfortable outside of the very first pull of Agathar, but that pull's just kind of crazy. So yeah, I think it's a very, very viable hero talent. I personally find it to be a bit more engaging, a bit more fun than Shado-Pan, so I wanted to go over it. Now, for this guide, I'm going to assume you have a base understanding of how Brewmaster works. I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty of every single nuance and, you know, what Celestial Brew does and Fortifying Brew and all that stuff. I'm going to assume that you have been playing Brewmaster and you relatively know how to play it. And this is specifically going to be about the differences that this Master of Harmony build that I'm doing has, as opposed to like the typical Shado-Pan build. All right, just to give you guys an overview, you know, this is my score right now. I'm 3,300. I just timed the 17 today, done some 16s, done some 15s. All of these have felt really, really comfortable. Again, outside of like the very first pull of Agathar. But yeah, like very, very comfortable. My gear is also not the best. Like I had this horrible crit haste neck that I'm going to get rid of next week. I don't raid, so I have zero access to good trinkets. So I'm a little gimped there. You know, I'm only like 274, 275. So, you know, I definitely have a lot of work left to do on this character, but I'm able to do 16, 17s, no problem. You know, the reason why we don't time is never because I die to a pull or something, or just get one shot or whatever because I'm playing the wrong hero talent. So Master of Harmony is absolutely, absolutely viable, and I think it's a lot of fun. So this is the build. I'm going to go over the build, and then I'm going to kind of talk about the rotation and some, you know, min-maxing that we can do. On the left-hand side for the monk tree, nothing too crazy here. The only things I want to talk about just very briefly in general, I personally think Pressure Points is extremely good this season. There's at least 4 dungeons that have enrages that you can dispel that will save you a ton of damage. Mizara, Agathar, Seat, Windrunner. Yeah, so like what, 4 or 5 dungeons have stuff you can dispel. So very, very good talent. Obviously, you know, you can take something else if you want, but very, very good talent. I'm going to mess around with Chi Wave as well. There have been a lot of times where I just don't have the time to cast Chi Burst, even though it is objectively far more damage. I find myself sitting on this cooldown a little bit too much in certain pulls where you just need to be, you know, getting as much Purifying Brews out as possible. So I'm going to try Chi Wave. It's probably not as good, but I want to see how it performs. So if anyone has tried it, let me know in the comments. And then the last thing I want to talk about here is Chi Transfer. You know, this turns Touch of Death into a very, very good kind of mini cooldown where it heals you for 50% of the damage it does, and it also clears all of your stagger already. So just don't sleep on that. Just wanted to quickly touch on those 3 things. But let's get into the main chunk of it here. So obviously we're going to be playing Master of Harmony. We're not playing Shado-Pan. And before I go over the talents here, the big change that Blizzard did to Master of Harmony last week is before you would cast Keg Smash and your Celestial Infusion or your Celestial Brew, and you would gain a buff called Potential Energy, and that would stack up to 6 times. And then every time you Tiger Palmed, you would use 1 stack, and it would do a little bit of extra damage. It would do a little bit of healing. The problem was you could never be below. It was very rare to ever get below like 4 stacks. You were basically just overcapping the entire dungeon and losing an insane amount of damage. There is no situation ever, regardless of what talents you're building, that you're ever going to Tiger Palm 3 times in a row. And even Tiger Palming 2 times in a row is pretty rare. So it just didn't make sense. It was just very, very bad. It made Master of Harmony just honestly kind of unplayable. So what they did was they also... sorry if you heard any Discord notifications. That was me. That was not you. Don't freak out. You're not going crazy. What they did was now, whenever you Keg Smash and Brew or Infusion, you get stacks of Potential Energy again. But your Tiger Palm uses all of those stacks at once. So now you're basically never going to overcap unless you misplay. So now you actually can get full value out of it. It is important to note that each charge of Harmonic Surge, or I guess Potential Energy, whatever the buff is called, does not cause them all to do more damage. It's just a bigger burst of damage. So as long as you are not overcapping your potential energy stacks, you shouldn't be losing any damage from this throughout the course of the dungeon. It kind of just depends on like when you want to use it and when you don't want to use it. There's one more talent I want to talk about, but I'm going to get to that a little bit later because it involves blackout combo. In here, unfortunately, the choice nodes are all basically dead. The only one you can mess around with is this. I think both of these are fine. Roar from the Heavens is probably really good in like Skyreach for the wind area zone or whatever, but either you just take your pick. I think most people do Tiger's Vigor just because it's a little bit more versatile, but both are fine. This is absolutely terrible. Does nothing for us. This is complete garbage. Is a Mistweaver talent. I don't even think they take that. And then this is also complete trash. If they made it so this worked on Infusion and Brew instead of Fort Brew, this could actually be really interesting, and I wish they would do that, but they don't. There's just never a situation where getting a 76,000 shield is more valuable than removing an additional 10% stagger. I mean, this talent is just crazy. So unfortunately, your choice nodes are basically all dead, but you know, what else is new? It's a Blizzard game. So getting into Brewmaster here, you're going to notice some differences from Shado-Pan. The first difference is we're not going to run Swift as Coursing River. The auto attack speed is basically dead. It doesn't really do anything for us. I guess the extra movement speed is kind of nice, but honestly, we don't really need it. And this has way more synergy with us because of Overwhelming Force. So because we're playing Master of Harmony, our Tiger Palm and Blackout Kick will cleave essentially in a line in front of us. So making Blackout Kick do more damage is going to get us more AoE in general. You could take out Special Delivery if you want. I guess if you wanted to play this, or maybe you wanted 1 point and Walk with the Ox, or you wanted Tranquil Spirit, you could. But for the most part, I think Special Delivery is your best bet. It's going to give you a lot of damage. It should be doing anywhere from like 4 to 5% of your overall. It's very, very powerful and very significant. Obviously, we're playing Infusion over Brew, and the first difference you're going to see is we're playing Bob and Weave instead of Black Ox Brew. And the reason for that is because if you take a look at high tolerance, right? 4% extra stagger effectiveness, and whenever you're at elevated stagger, you refund 6 seconds of Purifying Brew. So elevated stagger is when your Purifying Brew lights up. It is not when you are in heavy stagger. That is a big difference that I think a lot of people probably know about now, but at least at the beginning were confused on. So when it lights up, you're elevated stagger. And so you refund 6 seconds of the cooldown there, and you're already refunding 3 seconds of it with Keg Smash, and when you blackout combo, that increases it to 2. But because we're playing Master of Harmony and we have meditative focus, your blackout combo into Keg Smash reduces it by an additional second. So all told, if you blackout kick and then Keg Smash, your Keg Smash will reduce your brew cooldowns by 6 seconds. So if you do that plus this, that's 12 seconds off the cooldown. I believe it's 18, 19, depending on your haste, I guess. So yeah, that basically turns this into a 6-7 second cooldown per charge. Very, 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 very powerful, and is kind of more value than with this increasing your stagger duration by 5 seconds. It's kind of more valuable than having Black Ox Brew. Since we already have 2 infusions anyways, because we're Master of Harmony, we don't need this to reset it, and we're getting so much cooldown reduction on our brews that it's often more valuable to do Bob and Weave than to do Black Ox Brew, because we just have so much clearing in general. Other than that, I personally am not running Heart of the Ox. I hate this talent. I think this talent is unbelievably boring and just terrible, and I wish they would remove it from the game. I don't know why they make boring talents like this. But whatever, I'm not Blizzard. They can do what they want, I guess. But this talent is just absolutely mind-numbing, and I hate it. So that's part of the reason why I don't run it. But also just like pure feely craft. I did a couple dungeons with this talent at a 16. I did a couple dungeons with Anvil and Stave at 16. And Anvil and Stave just felt better in those really large pulls, especially at the beginning of a dungeon with Lust, because Lust doesn't do anything for us. This was giving me so much more brew reduction and cooldown reduction. I had like 2 or 3 extra purifies. It felt like that might not actually be true, but it felt like I had so much more reduction with this than Heart of the Ox. So I think most people are running Heart of the Ox from what I've seen, but I really like Anvil and Stave. Honestly, there's a world where I kind of want to drop Nude Zao for the second point in this, because this doesn't really do a ton of damage. It's only like 2% of your overall. But yeah, so this is definitely a preference thing. You could also drop this and grab Ox Stance, I guess, if you want. I mean, I don't think this talent's very good, but I guess as you get up into higher keys, it can definitely be nice. But we're kind of staggering so much anyways, I don't think we really need it. I really like Empty the Cellar. Like, this is a talent that I think they should, do more things like. I think this is a lot of fun. The only problem with this talent is that it kind of, like, muddies up your rotation a lot and kind of delays some things. It just feels a bit better to not run with it actually than to run with it. But I do love these two talents. So if you want more damage or a little bit of extra damage and brew cooldown, you could point a point here. Or if you just want straight up more damage and some fun fire tornadoes, you could do that. But this is what I'm running. The only other thing I want to talk about is this choice node here. Obviously on Shado-Pan, a lot of people are now moving to fluidity and motion. We are playing shadow boxing treads. The main reason for this is because our AoE is is definitely lacking compared to Shado-Pan because we don't have flurry strikes. We make up for that in single target in spades, but you know, this is mostly just to help kind of get that extra AoE damage up. It also kind of works better with the rotation, and it lets you stack up your potential energy more for some bigger burst, which can be kind of nice in certain situations, especially if you time it with your coalescence and stuff. But I would recommend that if you find yourself really struggling with this build to stay alive, the two things I would change is I would maybe try Black Ox Brew just while you're getting kind of used to playing Master of Harmony again, or Fluidity and Motion just so you get more blackout combos so you can get more brew cooldown reduction. If I really am struggling to survive, this is probably the first change I would make just to get that extra survivability in there. So in terms of how this plays, by and large, it plays very similar to Shado-Pan. The main two differences are, one, you're going to have to track potential energy. You don't want to overcap. If you're going to overcap, you need to just throw out a Tiger Palm, even if it doesn't have blackout combo attached to it. Just throw out a Tiger Palm to clear all those stacks, get the damage out of it, because if you're overcapping that a lot, you might as well just be playing Shado-Pan because you're losing out on a very large portion of the value of why you're playing Master of Harmony, and you're missing out on a lot of damage. So track your potential energy, don't ever overcap, and as much as you can, you want to Tiger Palm or Blackout Kick into Tiger Palm. So as much as possible, you want to go like Keg Fire, Blackout Tiger, Keg Fire, Blackout Tiger. That's the main loop. However, it's going to be up to your discretion, and this is where the skill ceiling and the floor kind of come in, and why I find this to be so much more interesting is you need to also be able to live as a tank. So you're going to have to spend your blackout combo on Keg Smash at times, especially in very large pulls, to make sure you have enough brew cooldown reduction. Ideally, you only purify when you're in elevated stagger. Because we're taking bob and weave, we have an extra 5 seconds for our stagger to do damage to us. So even though it feels scary because we're at red stagger for a while, the damage we're taking is so much more spread out even than normal that a lot of times you can just sit in red stagger and really not care, especially since we have training of New Zhao, so we're getting more mastery from it. Like, don't try and min-max this and be crazy, but especially because we have that, you're going to be dodging more. So you can sit in red stagger more because of bob and weave and just kind of let your healer kind of heal you up, or just let your Vital Flame and your empty barrels and your refreshing drinks and stuff like that heal you up. And you ideally want to purify when you're in elevated stagger. Now, obviously, if you have like 1.5 million stagger or something like that, obviously you want to clear that. But by and large, you want to purify when you're in elevated stagger, and then blackout into Keg Smash, and then boom, 12 seconds off the cooldown of your Purify, so you have a lot more of them. You also really need to monitor your Celestial Infusions to make sure you have enough of these, especially when Fortifying Brew is down, because we're not running Black Ox Brew. So you need to be careful about that. But I find that that moment-to-moment decision-making process to be far more engaging and a lot more fun. And while this is definitely a harder version of Brewmaster than Shado-Pan, I think it's much more rewarding, and I think the single target damage, especially with some of these bosses, is very, very valuable and very, very nice. Just to give you an example of what your breakdown should look like, this is what it'll probably look like in game. If you look at a log, it will look very different from this. The reason being is it will combine Harmonic Surge and Tiger Palm into one skill, and also combines Keg Smash and Empty Barrel into one skill. So if you combine these two together, Tiger Palm is my top damage by far. Ideally, Tiger Palm, when you look at like a log, or when you combine Harmonic Surge and Tiger Palm together, this is a 17 Aguilar, by the way. When you combine those two together, they should be anywhere from like 22 to 26% of your overall damage should be these two things together. And then your next highest should be Keg Smash with Empty Barrel. That should be either tied with Breath of Fire or slightly ahead of Breath of Fire. So it should be Tiger Palm, Harmonic Surge together is number 1. Keg Smash plus Empty Barrel together is number 2 or 3, and then Breath of Fire is 2 or 3. As long as they're very close to each other, it doesn't really matter. After that, it's probably going to be like Overwhelming Force, and then it kind of just blackout kick, or it is kind of whatever it is. But if you're really, really low on the Tiger Palm damage and stuff, you're probably not blackout combo into Tiger Palm enough. So just keep that in mind. But again, this is what it'll look like in game because it's not combining them. But if you look at a log on Warcraft logs, it will. So don't freak out when you look at someone else's log and their Tiger Palm is like 13% more of their overall than yours. It's because it's combining them together. So in terms of how this plays, like I said, it is very, very similar to Shado-Pan, but you're going to open up with a Keg Smash into Breath of Fire. Obviously, when you're grouping, you might want a Tiger Palm or Spinning Crane to help group and stuff, and then you're going to Blackout Kick into Tiger Palm, and you're basically just going to repeat that process all together. Now, ideally, you would like to time your Celestial Infusion with your Chi Burst and your Exploding Keg, because when you press your Celestial Infusion, you draw upon the Vitality to do extra damage, so it'll allow those to have much larger bursts of damage. But it's not the end of the world. Depending on what your rotation is and the state of the pull and everything, you might not be able to make this happen. At the end of the day, the damage should basically still be the same. The only advantage of timing it with those really is, like, if you crit with these, it's going to be even more than if you just crit with like a Tiger Palm or something, because the base number is higher. But is my understanding. Maybe I'm not understanding how this works correctly, but ideally you want to time your Aspect of Harmony buff that you get after you pop your infusion with these two. So every like 30 seconds you're popping one of these. But again, at the end of the day, as a tank, you need to live. So if you need to save this or use this earlier or something to not die, and it doesn't line up with using these, that's totally fine. Other than that, this is kind of your main gameplay loop. And then depending on the situations, if you want, you can reset like that. Boom. We got full value there. And, this is just kind of the main loop that you're doing over and over and over again. You can see I'm tracking my important buffs. Nude Zao on cooldown for the most part here. Depending, I would probably just do this if I was trying to just get max damage. And yeah, I mean, that's basically it. So here I just want to show like the power of Master of Harmony from a defensive standpoint. Obviously, we have 2 infusions, which is very nice, just baseline. But if I can get into Elevated Stagger here, hello. Okay, cool. So we're Elevated Stagger, Blackout combo into that. Boom. 9 seconds left on our Purify. So just doing that, I didn't even Tiger Palm again or Keg Smash or anything. Just 3 button presses, and we almost have another Purify immediately. Again, that only works when you're Elevated Stagger, but it's very, very powerful from a defensive standpoint because you just Purify all the time. And then with that, since you have so many Purifies, it's also giving you damage with Special Delivery, and you're also getting a ton of healing with Gaiplins. It's very, very powerful, which is even more valuable because we're clearing 10% more with Mantra of Purity. It's very, very good. Yeah, that's the main sort of defensive benefit, is that you are just very, very hard to kill because you have 2 infusions and you have an extra 5 seconds on your duration of taking Stagger from Bob and Weave, and then you just have so much clearing as long as you clear when you're at Elevated Stagger, which is, again, when it lights up. But yeah, let me know what you all think. This is a really, really fun build. It's definitely very powerful on the defensive side. It does take a little bit of getting used to, especially if you're used to having that Black Ox Brew like immediate sort of reset, because we've been playing this talent for years now. It does take a little bit of getting used to play around Bob and Weave, but I think the decision-making process is a lot of fun. I personally like Master of Harmony, just that extra little bonus of making sure I don't overcap my harmonic potential, or my potential energy, is a lot of fun. It just gives me a little bit more to think about, and I think this is overall a much better design for Master of Harmony for Brewmaster. It definitely still has some issues, but it's a lot more fun, it's a lot more engaging, and I think it is a nice change of pace from Shado-Pan, because we've been playing Shado-Pan for there have been multiple seasons now. I think Shado-Pan was better in every season except for season 2 of The War Within, and even then it was still pretty comparable. So Master of Harmony really hasn't had a lot of time to shine for Brewmaster, and I think this build is very viable and very good for high-end content or even low-end content, and is a nice change of pace. So just wanted to share it all with you, and let me know what you think down in the comments. Have a good one, and I will catch you all later.